The impact rattled Elias Voss's teeth as his scout vessel slammed into the dusty surface of Kelsira. Warning lights flashed across his control panel like angry fireflies before fading to darkness. Through the cracked viewport, twin moons hung low in an unfamiliar lavender sky. Navigation system failure, the ship's AI announced with infuriating calm. Life support compromised. Recommend immediate evacuation. Elias unstrapped himself, wincing at the pain shooting through his left shoulder. No kidding, he muttered, grabbing the emergency pack from beneath his seat. After 15 years as Frontier Command's most decorated pilot, he'd never experienced such a complete systems failure. One moment he'd been charting the outer rim of the Cygnus sector, the next his engines had shut down as if someone had flipped a switch. The airlock hissed open, revealing a landscape of twisted purple vegetation and jagged rock formations. Elias adjusted his oxygen mask and took his first step onto the alien moon's surface, testing the gravity. Approximately 80% of Earth normal, manageable, but every movement would require extra calculation. He'd barely begun assessing the damage to his ship when he felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. "Your vessel is beyond repair," said a melodic voice behind him. Elias spun around, hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. Standing 20 meters away was a humanoid figure, female, if he had to guess, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Her eyes were larger than human standard, an iridescent blue that reminded him of Earth's oceans. Despite her alien features, there was something hauntingly familiar about her face. "I mean no harm," she said, raising two perfectly normal hands in a universal gesture of peace. "I am Talia. Elias Voss, Frontier Command." His voice sounded rougher than usual. "You speak my language." A slight smile curved her lips. "I speak many languages. Yours was easy to learn." Elias studied her, noting the lack of visible weapons. She wore a form-fitting suit of material he couldn't identify, with strange symbols etched along the sides. "This moon is uninhabited according to our charts. Your charts are incomplete." Talia gestured toward a distant ridge. "I have shelter nearby. The temperature drops dangerously after sunset." She paused, her head tilting slightly. "That will be soon." Elias glanced back at his damaged ship. The rational choice would be to stay with his vessel and activate the emergency beacon. But something in her eyes, a curiosity, an intelligence, compelled him forward. "Lead the way," he said finally. The journey took nearly an hour, winding through crystalline rock formations that chimed softly in the wind. Talia moved with graceful efficiency, occasionally slowing to allow him to navigate the steeper sections. They spoke little, but Elias felt her gaze on him whenever he looked away. The shelter turned out to be an ancient structure built into the side of a cliff. Geometric patterns carved into stone that seemed to pulse with faint internal light. Inside, the air was surprisingly breathable. "You can remove your mask," Talia said, watching him with those unsettling ocean eyes. "This place maintains its own atmosphere." "What is this place?" Elias asked, cautiously removing his mask and taking an experimental breath. "A remnant of those who came before. My people study such places." She gestured to a sunken area containing cushions of various sizes. "Rest. Your body requires recovery." As Elias lowered himself onto the cushions, exhaustion finally catching up with him, Talia knelt beside him with a container of clear liquid. "Drink," she instructed. "Then sleep." Their fingers brushed as he accepted the container, sending an unexpected warmth through his hand. For a brief moment, her composed facade seemed to waver. "Why help me?" Elias asked, the question hanging between them. Talia's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in those oceanic eyes. "Perhaps I was simply in the right place at the right time." As sleep began to claim him, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that nothing about his crash, or this encounter, was accidental at all. Elias woke to the sound of humming, a melody both alien and strangely comforting. Sunlight filtered through translucent crystal panels in the ceiling, casting rainbow patterns across the ancient floor. Talia sat cross-legged at a console embedded in the wall, her fingers dancing over symbols that pulsed in response to her touch. "Your breathing pattern changed," she said without turning. "You've been unconscious for 16 hours. Elias pushed himself upright, surprised to find the pain in his shoulder had subsided. "Did you heal me?" Talia finally turned, those ocean blue eyes studying him with clinical precision. "Basic cellular regeneration. Your species heals remarkably quickly even without assistance." Over the next 3 days, they established a cautious routine. Mornings spent assessing the damage to his ship, which Talia insisted was repairable despite the eye's assessment. Afternoons exploring the ruins surrounding her outpost. Evenings exchanging stories about their respective worlds. "Your people have spread to only 8 planetary systems," Talia asked during their 4th dinner together. "A meal of strange but delicious bioluminescent fungi. With your adaptability, I would have expected more." "We've mapped hundreds," Elias explained, "but permanent colonies are more complicated. Resources, politics, the usual mess that comes with humanity." He set down his eating utensil. "What about your people?" "I've never encountered any species quite like you." A shadow crossed Tullia's face. "We prefer isolation. Our history with other civilizations has been complicated." Later that night, as twin moons bathed the landscape in silver light, they sat on an outcropping overlooking a valley of singing crystals. The temperature had dropped considerably, and Elias found himself unconsciously moving closer to Talia's warmth. "Why did you really help me, Talia?" he asked quietly. "There's more to this than random kindness." For the first time, her composure faltered. "Your questions are persistent. It's a human trait, one of many I find unexpected." Her voice softened. "When I first saw you emerge from your vessel, I thought you would be different, more like the reports I had studied." "Reports?" Talia turned to face him fully, their faces now inches apart. "There is much I cannot tell you. Not yet." Her hand, warm and surprisingly soft, came to rest against his cheek. "But I find myself wanting to." The kiss, when it came, felt like electricity coursing through Elias's body. Different yet familiar, alien yet perfectly natural. Her skin beneath his fingers glowed faintly at his touch, a biological response she couldn't control. "This is unwise," she whispered against his lips, even as her arms tightened around him. "Another human trait," Elias replied, pulling her closer. Under the watchful gaze of ancient ruins, they came together in a tangle of limbs and whispered discoveries, human and alien. Yet in the darkness, the differences seemed to matter less than the connections they were forging. Talia's control slipped further with each touch, each caress revealing more about her true nature than words ever could. Afterward, as they lay entwined on a bed of soft moss, Talia traced the outline of a scar on his chest. "You carry many stories on your skin." "Occupational hazard," Elias murmured, his fingers combing through her silvery hair. "Though none as interesting as crashing on a supposedly uninhabited moon and meeting you." Something like guilt flickered across her features. "Elias, there is something I must." A sharp beeping interrupted her. Talia stiffened, immediately extracting herself from his embrace. She moved to her console, fingers flying over the symbols with increased urgency. "What is it?" Elias asked, sensing the sudden change. "A communication I must attend to." Her voice had returned to its earlier detachment. "Alone." As she disappeared deeper into the ruins, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was building between them was about to face its first real test, and that the truth, when it finally emerged, would change everything.
The change in Talia was immediate and unsettling. For 3 days following the mysterious communication, she maintained a careful distance, her earlier warmth replaced by a focused efficiency. She redoubled efforts to repair Elias's ship, working tirelessly on components he hadn't even realized were damaged. "You're trying to get rid of me," Elias observed on the evening of the 3rd day, cornering her in the ship's engine room. "What changed?" Talia's hand stilled over the propulsion matrix. Your repairs are nearly complete. You can return to your people soon. That doesn't answer my question. He stepped closer, noticing how she tensed. Was it the communication? Are you in some kind of trouble because of me? It is not your concern. It became my concern when you shared my bed, Elias said quietly. When you looked at me like I was more than just some stranded pilot you took pity on. Something fractured in Talia's carefully maintained facade. She turned away, her shoulders slumping in a gesture so human it startled him. I was not supposed to feel anything for you, she whispered. It complicates everything. Then uncomplicate it. Tell me the truth. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken words. Finally, Talia activated a hidden panel on her wrist device. A holographic projection sprang to life between them, intricate cellular structures Elias recognized as DNA, though the configuration was unlike anything he'd seen. This is you, she said simply. Your genetic pattern. Beside it appeared another sequence, similar yet distinctly alien. And this is what we have been searching for throughout your galaxy for over a century. Elias studied the rotating structures. I don't understand. Our civilizations have crossed paths before, Elias. Long before your people reached the stars. Talia's eyes held his, unflinching. There was an exchange, biological, cultural. The details have been lost, but the genetic markers remain. Understanding began to dawn. You're saying I carry alien DNA? Your people's DNA. Not just any markers. Specific ones, prophesied to appear in one individual whose existence would signal a coming convergence between our peoples. Her voice grew softer. Your crash was no accident. Your navigation systems were compromised the moment you entered this sector. The revelation hit Elias like a physical blow. You sabotaged my ship. You've been lying to me this entire time. I was sent to find you. To verify your genetic signature and then. She hesitated. And then what, Talia? Bring you back to my people. Or eliminate you if you refused. The words hung in the air between them, devastating in their simplicity. Elias stepped back, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. So everything, all of it, was just part of your mission. Pain flashed across Talia's features. At first, yes. I am an elite scout, trained for decades for this specific task. Finding you was supposed to be the culmination of my life's purpose. And now? Now I am compromised. She moved toward him, stopping when he tensed. The physical connection between us, it was unexpected. Forbidden. What I feel for you is. She struggled for words. It challenges everything I was taught to believe. Convenient timing for this crisis of conscience, Elias said bitterly. Just as my ship is nearly repaired. The communication was from my superiors. They are coming, Elias. A retrieval team will arrive within days. Her eyes pleaded with him. I was ordered to secure you by any means necessary. Elias felt the weight of her revelation crushing down on him. And what does your prophecy say happens after you retrieve me? Talia's silence was answer enough. I need air, he muttered, pushing past her toward the exit. Don't follow me. Outside, under the alien sky he'd grown almost fond of, Elias tried to reconcile the woman he'd begun to care for with the operative who had orchestrated his crash landing. Who had been prepared to kill him if necessary. And who now held both their fates in her hands.
Dawn broke over Kelsira's horizon, bathing the landscape in crimson light. Elias sat on the edge of a cliff, watching as crystal formations caught the sunlight and scattered it into dazzling patterns. He hadn't returned to the outpost that night, choosing instead to camp beside his nearly repaired ship. The sound of approaching footsteps made him tense. Your oxygen reserves must be running low, Talia said, keeping a respectful distance. I brought supplements. Elias accepted the offering without comment. They sat in uneasy silence as the alien sun climbed higher. I accessed your ship's database last night, he finally said. Used the emergency protocols to bypass your security measures. If Talia was surprised by this admission, she didn't show it. What did you find? Records, historical analyses, references to something called the Convergence Protocol. He turned to look at her. Your people believe I'm some kind of catalyst for an invasion, don't you? It is more complicated than that. Talia sighed. The sound strangely human. The prophecy speaks of a bridge between worlds, formed through genetic harmony. Some interpret this as a peaceful union. Others see it as a threat to be neutralized. Elias finished. And which camp are your superiors in? The data is inconclusive. They wish to study you, to understand the significance of your genetic pattern. She hesitated, but they are not known for their patience or mercy toward potential threats. Elias stood abruptly. Well, they'll have to find me first. The ship's functional enough for an emergency jump. They will track you across galaxies. There is nowhere in charted space they cannot follow. Then I'll go uncharted. And your people, your frontier command. Talia stood as well, her expression pained. The retrieval team has orders to secure their target by any means necessary, if they cannot find you. The implication hung heavy between them. Hostages, collateral damage, escalation. What do you want from me, Talia? Elias demanded. You orchestrate my crash, seduce me, tell me I'm part of some alien prophecy, and now warn me about the very people who sent you. I want you to understand your significance. Her composure finally cracked, raw emotion bleeding through. What happens next affects both our civilizations. The connection between us, it mirrors something greater, something inevitable. She stepped closer, eyes imploring. My superiors arrive tomorrow. Every possibility ends in conflict except one. Let me guess, I surrender myself willingly. No. Talia took his hand, pressing it to the center of her chest, where he could feel her alien heart beating in a rhythm almost, but not quite, like his own. We forge our own interpretation of the prophecy. Together. That night, in the soft glow of the outpost's ancient lighting, they laid out their desperate plan. Between urgent kisses and whispered contingencies, they plotted a third path, neither surrender nor escape, but confrontation on their own terms. If we succeed, Talia murmured against his skin as they came together one last time, we rewrite the ending of a story centuries in the making. And if we fail? Elias asked, memorizing the contours of her face with his fingertips. Talia's smile was both sad and determined. Then at least we fail, having chosen our own path. As they lay entwined in the quiet aftermath, a signal pulsed on Talia's console. The retrieval ship had entered the system. By dawn, they would arrive. The retrieval ship descended through Kelsira's atmosphere with predatory grace, its obsidian hull absorbing, rather than reflecting light. From their vantage point among the crystal formations, Elias and Talia watched as it settled beside his repaired vessel. 4 operatives. Talia whispered, studying the deployment through specialized lenses, including Commander Vex. Elias recognized the name from their planning sessions, your former mentor, and the most decorated tactical mind in 3 generations. She lowered the lenses, expression grim. He will not be deceived easily. Then we don't try to deceive him. Elias checked the modified communicator they had spent the night adapting. We show him the truth. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Using components from both their technologies, they had created a device capable of displaying the complex biological integration occurring between them, a phenomenon Talia had discovered during their intimate encounters but had initially dismissed as impossible. Their cells were harmonizing, adapting to each other in ways that echoed the ancient prophecy but suggested a very different interpretation than either of their civilizations had considered. It is time, Talia said as the retrieval team began moving toward the outpost. She adjusted the ceremonial garment she wore, an indicator of her elite status that would force even Commander Vex to observe certain protocols. Elias caught her hand before she could step into the open. Whatever happens, I don't regret crashing here. A smile touched her lips. Even knowing I caused it. Especially knowing that. He kissed her briefly. Ready? Ready. The confrontation unfolded at the entrance to the ancient outpost. Commander Vex, tall and imposing even by his species standards, showed no surprise at finding Talia and Elias waiting together. "Scout Talia," he greeted formally, "you were instructed to secure the subject, not fraternize with it." "Commander," Talia responded with equal formality, "I have discovered information critical to our understanding of the convergence protocol. Request immediate audience." A flicker of curiosity crossed Vex's severe features. "Denied. The subject will be transported immediately for proper examination." "With respect, Commander, such action may irreparably damage the very phenomenon we have sought to understand." Talia activated the device they had created, projecting a holographic display of their intertwined genetic structures. "Behold the true convergence." For several tense moments, Vex studied the projection, his expression unreadable. The operatives behind him maintained their combat stance, weapons trained on Elias. "Impossible," Vex finally said, though doubt had crept into his voice. "The prophecy speaks of subjugation, of one species asserting dominance over the other. Those interpretations were made by politicians and military strategists," Talia countered, "not by the genetic archivists who first discovered the markers." She stepped closer to Elias, their hands joining in deliberate display. "What if the prophecy never spoke of conflict at all? What if the convergence is meant to be a union rather than a conquest?" The evidence was compelling. Their cellular structures displayed a harmonization unprecedented in either species' scientific records. Not absorption or domination, but mutual adaptation. "Even if what you show is genuine," Vex said carefully, "the Directorate has already committed to their interpretation. Plans are in motion. Then help us change their minds." Elias spoke for the first time, addressing Vex directly. "My people have no knowledge of yours, no hostile intent. There's an opportunity here for something revolutionary." What followed was hours of tense negotiation, scientific demonstration, and eventually reluctant consideration. By nightfall, a tentative accord had been reached. Elias and Talia would return with the retrieval team, not as prisoner and captor, but as living proof of a new possibility. As they made final preparations to depart, Elias stood at the viewport of his repaired ship, watching the alien landscape that had changed his existence so fundamentally. "Having second thoughts?" Talia asked, joining him. "Wondering what comes next," he admitted. "We're rewriting prophecies, challenging military directives, attempting to prevent an interspecies conflict, all because I crashed on the right moon." Talia's hand found his, her skin glowing faintly at the contact, the visible manifestation of their unique bond. "There is an ancient saying among my people, fate brings the worthy to the precipice. Courage determines whether they fly or fall. And which are we doing, flying or falling?" Her smile, once so carefully controlled, now came freely. "Perhaps the difference is merely perspective." As both vessels broke atmosphere and accelerated toward distant stars, Elias knew their journey was just beginning. There would be resistance, danger, and uncertainty ahead. Two civilizations stood at the brink of either historic alliance or devastating conflict. But in the space between their joined hands, something new had already taken root, a convergence neither of their worlds had anticipated, but which might just save them both.